if you can get a group of people or individuals, one individual to understand and agree to a standard, and then just ask them to meet that and call them out when they don't. And you don't have to be unkind about it, but I do think that it comes down to having a shared expectation, a shared understanding of this is how this program is going to work.
Whether you live northeast, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus.
Hello, everyone. Yes, welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. Ken and Jay here again to pontificate and share thoughts and speak with a very special guest. We're happy to have him in here today. Jay, how you doing?
Not too bad, Ken. It's been a good couple weeks. Not a fan of the time change, though. I'll tell you that. I feel like it's 10 o'clock, when it's like 4:30 now. So trying to catch up on my sleep. They always say you get that hour extra sleep, and I don't know, for some reason I don't feel it just yet. So maybe that's going to happen next week. But how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a good week for me as well. Just enjoying what we're doing, and going to be going down visiting one of our former guests, JD Koziarski. Going to be working with some of his kids today. And yes, Jay, I do have my athletic pants on. So
good. That's great. Well, you are doing an athletic sport, so I think that's a very good idea that you have athletic mobility. It's just about mobility, Ken.
Yep. Yeah, well, I don't, at my age, I don't have a whole lot of mobility no matter what pants I'm wearing, but I at least try to look the part.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And I even have a polo shirt with my softball success logo on it.
I see that. That's nice.
Yeah.
You're just all about that branding now. Man.
You betcha. Yeah. And it was nice. I was able to find that online, just, a place that would do a one-off shirt like that. So, it's always exciting when you can do those sorts of things and look like you actually know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
At least till I open my mouth.
I want to ask you, Ken, do you have any kids down playing in the Scenic City showcase this weekend? Or there's the other one, the Alliance. I think there's a qualifier down in Missouri. I got a ton of kids down there, so my Game Changer's just been blowing up the last couple days. Yeah,
I have one down at Scenic City. Saw that she just had 11 strikeouts in her game. So
nice.
Yeah, one walk, 11 strikeouts, no earned runs. So that's excellent. She did pretty well.
Good. Yeah, it's a big recruiting tournament down there. So
yeah,
excited for some of my kids to get out there in front of those coaches for a couple more times this fall. So
yep, maybe a couple of our kids will meet each other because there's nothing like traveling all that way to go play someone that's half an hour away from you.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I think that happened twice already on Friday. I was like, travel all the way there just to play a team from your hometown. But that's kind of how it goes. But
yep.
So enough about us rambling on here. We could go on forever. Why don't you give some information about this awesome guest that we have joining us today? I'm super excited to talk to this person and have worked with this person in some camps many, many years, and glad he decided to join us today.
All right. Well, looking at the early background of today's guest, you would expect he'd be doing an interview on a football podcast instead of one that focuses on fast pitch softball. A 4-year letter winner at Illinois Wesleyan University in Bloomington, Illinois, including the 1992 season where his team won the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin championship, he launched his coaching career at Resurrection High School in Chicago before returning to his alma mater as a residence life professional and assistant football and softball coach. After 2 seasons there, he moved to Dakota Wesleyan University in Mitchell, South Dakota, where his career path took a turn when he became head softball coach. He then moved on to Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi, where he split his time between his 2 coaching passions, serving as head softball coach as well as assistant football coach, eventually rising to the position of defensive coordinator for the majors. As head softball coach at Millsaps, he took over a team that had gone 1-26 the year before and directed it to 3 Southern Collegiate Athletic Conference West Division championships, 1 league title, and an NCAA third-place regional finish. But Illinois was never far from his heart, and in 2000 he returned to his home state to take the head coaching job at Lake Forest College, where he continued his winning ways. In nearly 20 seasons with the Foresters, he has accumulated more than 400 victories, giving him more than 500 over his total career, with 8 Midwestern Conference titles over the last 11 seasons, while advancing to the 4-team tournament every year since he took over the program. His teams have had numerous conference-leading performances in areas such as batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and many other categories. Not surprising, since he is also a well-respected hitting coach, and his 2015 team won the NCAA Division III Regional, earning an appearance at the Super Regional. We're very excited to have him here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm From the Coach's Mouth podcast welcome to the one and only Joe Kinsella.
Welcome, Joe.
Thanks,
Hi, Joe.
guys. I appreciate you having me on. This is a great thing you're doing, and honored to be invited on.
Well, we're definitely excited to have you here. You know, Jay and I both known you for a few years, and you know, we've been trying to get the schedules all to line up and everything. So that's great that you were able to join us this morning.
Yeah, no, I'm glad this all worked out.
Us too.
So, no, well, I'm gonna ask you, how come you're not out recruiting this weekend? Every weekend I see you, you're always out there recruiting. Today, you're just you just made some time for us, or are you just staying more local this weekend?
I'm just here for you guys.
Oh,
This weekend is all about you. No, I'll be honest. It's you know how it is. You're out on the road recruiting, and obviously there's things you have to take care of back at home. Plus, our men's and women's soccer teams are both hosting conference championship games today. Our women's team's undefeated on the season, and our men's team is a 1 loss on the season. So that's really exciting. But there's small colleges. There's always a need for us all to chip in, and Lake Forest is a neat place where we, more than anything, we really support each other. So it's great to be there for those 2 teams, programs, and coaches that I've been coaching with for a long time, and get out and support them as they, their success. They've always supported me, and I like to look out for them too.
that's great. So you're going to be working at the tournament today?
I think today I get to just cheer them on. So
nice.
I'm excited about that. I'm sure somebody will pull me and ask me to move something, but
well, you got to go where your talent lies, right?
Exactly. Just hired muscle.
Yeah. All right. So I have to ask you, was it always your plan to become a college coach, or is that something you kind of fell into?
No, I figured I'd coach my kids' little league team someday. I grew up and I always played for great coaches, and like any coach, there's things you learn and things you want to mirror and things that you want to avoid. And I think that got that with any coach you coach for. But athletics was always something that was around myself and my family. My brother was definitely on a coaching path. He's 2 years younger than me. You get that brother who's 2 years younger than you that you want to be more like. And so I think that probably a little bit of that factored in. Yeah, I fell into it by accident, and it's obviously served me well, and hopefully I've served the sports well that I've had my hands in.
So how did that happen? I mean, how did you end up coaching? Well, first of all, what were you planning on doing with your life, and then how did you end up in coaching?
I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. I had studied, just in college, you pick a degree sometimes by default with the classes that you're doing well in, and enjoy the conversation. And I always enjoyed the wrestling with the ideas and philosophy classes and religion classes and political science classes. And so I came out of college, and that's how I ended up at Resurrection High School. I started teaching, and I think I saw myself in a classroom, and also really always had in the back of my mind, I'd had a lot of opportunities just throughout my education to be involved in a lot of leadership workshops and leadership opportunities in different venues, not always in athletics. I was, if anything, I was rarely a team captain. I was no stellar athlete, but I was, I was on the team, but on the team for a state championship, and on a football team in college that were ranked 3rd in the country. And So I was around greatness a lot, I think, but always outside of athletics had a lot of leadership opportunities that I saw myself really gravitating toward being in that conversation and training people on a lot of those sorts of skills. But what, as a 21-year-old, you don't necessarily know what that looks like professionally.
Yeah.
But teaching at Resurrection High School, you kind of fall into things and, just having been an athlete, they ask you about, hey, can you help, with crowd control at the basketball game? It was all girls Catholic school in Chicago. So you get asked to volunteer for everything. They always say, you work at a Catholic school, don't buy a truck because they'll put a plow on it for you. So you can so just help out. And one day I got asked to help the track team. And so I started coaching, and then 2 weeks after I joined as an assistant track coach, the track coach quits, and now I'm the head track coach, which makes you the cross country coach. And but that first spring, they asked me to drive the van over spring break to take the freshman softball team. And I'd played for some really good baseball coaches, and just being part of good teams, I don't know that I'd seen a fast pitch softball game at that point. And so the first fast pitch game I saw, I was coaching third base and and driving the van. And, I got done, but the women come off the field, and girls, they're all 13 years old at that, 13, 14 years old at that point. But just little things like huddling up before you take the field, and those sorts of things. Those are things that I knew. And I just kept at it. I'm like, hey, have you guys ever done this? No. You want to try? Sure. And that group really just took to, just little things that I asked them to engage with, because they were all new at being athletes. And I think a lot of times with young players, you need to teach them how to be athletes. I think coaches all want to teach hitting, and at some point you have to teach them how to stand in, like, this is how you stand in line for a drill. Yeah. And I think we skip that sometimes, and then we don't know why they're not focused and why they can't, why the practice didn't run well, because you were too worried about the hitting and not enough on just teaching them to be an athlete, how to be part of a team. So that worked well. And, one thing leads to another. I had all the stipend money for track and indoor track and cross country. And I told the athletic director, she and I were out that fall. I said, hey, next year I want to help with the softball team. She's like, you want to be a volunteer? You want to give up the biggest stipend we have on campus to be the volunteer varsity assistant softball coach? She's like, no, I want to be the volunteer assistant JV coach. And, they always say things happen for a reason. I'm a moron. And that's so a lot of my coaching turns, just being too dumb to make the intelligent decision. So yeah, it's been a long ride, but I still, that first group of women that I coached, gosh, almost 30 years ago, they more than 30 years ago, that, I still get invited every once in a while. Hey, we're going out for so-and-so's birthday. And I still stay in touch with a handful of those women. Wow.
So is that's the start for you? You played football.
That was the start for me.
Played football in college. So did you find any, I always hear this, and I firmly believe this. I believe that kids want to be coached, right? So were you as hard on those girls in your first couple of years there as you were when you, the football coach? You said you had a lot of great coaches. I'm sure your coaches were tough on you, Joe, back in the day, right? So
yeah, I think my coaches, go ahead.
You always hear that the coaches, that the girls want people to coach them up hard, just like that you're coaching boys and men. Do you agree with that statement? It's just something I want to throw out there, because I feel like we need to talk about that. People are afraid, like, oh, we're coaching girls. We've got to walk around on eggshells with them, and we got to, right? And I feel like not all of them want that. Like it was funny. We were playing this fall, Joe, and I had a kid in the fall, and last year she's like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's Coach Jay. That's where you kind of lit me up because I didn't go for the ball. And I'm like, ooh, sorry. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have done it. She's like, no, I needed that because I needed someone to get on me because I was slacking that day. Like, do you feel the same way? Was that anything you experienced when you first started out? Like, hey, I'm just going to coach them up hard and let it fall where it may? Or was it like, did you take it a little easier?
I think, and I think it was probably a little harder coach then than I am now. But I think that was not knowing any different. And at that point, other than I'd known, my mom talked about being an athlete, as a kid. And this is back before, and she was no longer an athlete by the time she got to high school. It was more playing in the yard. But it was something that she took pride in and took seriously. And I think that a little bit of too dumb to know any different. I coached the way I wanted to be coached. And I think it was at some level, you can coach them hard. But I think that anybody, if you can get a group of people or individuals, one individual to understand and agree to a standard, and then just ask them to meet that and call them out when they don't. And you don't have to be unkind about it. But I do think that it comes down to having a shared expectation, a shared understanding of this is how this program is going to work. And this is how things get done. I think that good coaches are collaborative with their athletes. And, I think that's there's a lot of questions and answers that go to that. And, but, certainly 30 years ago, I don't know that I had that much nuance to it, but I do know that my best coaches were the ones that we all understood the goal, that there was an intent to be successful. And at some point, it's not about being a coach being angry or mean or any of that. It's a matter of, hey, we all said that this is what we're trying to do. And that being said, this is how that gets done. So, and I think I've found that women respond to that as well or better than men do. Do they all? No. I coached football. I coached college football for 6 years. Do all the men handle it well? No, I don't think that men and women are the same. But as far as how you accomplish things and how you get the job done, I think it's all on a spectrum. And there are people who respond well to hard things, and other people you have to be a little softer with and have that conversation with. And I think you coach individuals more than you coach a team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I think I found that in my experience too, that people just assume that, you can just yell at the boys and they'll respond or they'll ignore you or whatever. But, it's about the individuals, and each person is going to approach it differently. They're going to take it differently. And the mark of a great coach is understanding, like you said, that you're coaching. If you have 12 people on the team, you're coaching 12 different ways, depending on what each one of those individuals does in order to bring out the best in each one of them.
Yeah. And I think you can look at it as selfishly as you want. If we all want the same thing, I don't need you to hear me the way I want you to hear me. It's my job to help you help us. And right. If that's a pat on the back, if giving you a pat on the back helps us, if you need a pat on the back, if you're our number one pitcher and you need a pat on the back instead of a kick in the butt, how am I helping the team if I'm kicking you in the butt?
Right.
Everyone on our team has one job, and that is to find ways to help us win. And that includes me. And me yelling at a kid that doesn't respond well to that doesn't help our team win. So I think the standards for performance and standards for character and all of that can be hard standards.
Right.
But it doesn't have to, how you accomplish those standards is less relevant.
Yeah. And I think that I've also heard the thing, if you establish the standards and then you have to come down on somebody later on, it's not you as the coach that's causing the punishment. The player understood what the forbidden behaviors were and what the consequences were. And if she chose to ignore that, then she punishes herself.
Correct. Yeah, I would completely agree with you, Ken.
All right. So you mentioned playing baseball. We know you played football and you were pretty high level for that. Did you play any other sports?
I played baseball in high school briefly, and I was a hitter that thought he was a catcher. And I was at a school where baseball and football were both really competitive. Joliet Catholic's a strong football program and state champions, and had the opportunity to be on a state championship team. But our baseball team, probably comparable. But I remember going in as a freshman where I'd only played rec ball. I'd never played anything other than rec ball. My parents hadn't grown up playing competitive sports, and so I went to high school, 120 guys trying out for a 20-man roster freshman baseball team, and I played rec ball. And I show up. And I make it. It's a week and a half of cuts. They're cutting 10 guys a day. I made it to the last day and got cut as a freshman. Came back as a sophomore, and ended up DPing on the sophomore team and the DHing and being a bullpen catcher. But I play all the coaches I played for in high school. I don't know if you know Gordy Gillespie, legendary baseball and football coach. I didn't play for him, but everyone I played for him. And so just a lot of great men that I had the opportunity to play for. So I think I learned a lot about coaching in a very short stint as a high school baseball player. But yeah, it was, I threw shot put as a freshman, didn't make the baseball team, went and threw shot put, never done that before. I think just trying to keep my hands in stuff and stay out of trouble.
Joe, I want to talk a little bit about your coaching journey here too. Like one of your stops at Millsaps College in Mississippi, you had that team had gone 1-26 the previous year, and then you take them on to great success, right? Like, so how did you turn that program around? What was your philosophy on that? Like, what was the thing there? I mean, a 1-26 program means you didn't probably have a lot of talent. You come in and all of a sudden now that you turn that team around. So what was the goal, and what lessons did you take away from that experience that you may have used later on throughout your coaching career?
Although it's probably nice because not a lot of pressure there, not too hard to beat 1-26.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. At that point, I didn't have a whole lot of resume to go with, so there was a 1-26 job's a lot easier to get.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was any magic. I think at that point, I'd never been an assistant softball coach. And really, I had 1 year of college head coach under my belt. I, was around the game a little bit. I guess I was a volunteer assistant for the JV team back at Resurrection High School for a year.
Yeah.
But it was, I think I just went in a little bit of trial and error. But it was, I think the way you build any program is it starts with the recruiting. You have to go out and get players. I think jokingly, of course, but my best coaching skill. I say this is my coaching style, and I cross my fingers because at the end of the day, I'm a big believer of teach people in practice, and then you put them on the field and get out of their way, especially at the college level. I'm coaching grown women who have played softball for 15 plus years. For me, if anything, I think I spend a lot of time with my athletes now trying to get out of their way, but I don't have a hard time with that. I think so many of them are not used to being in a position to make decisions on their own. I think athletes are micromanaged at a very high level. I think, and that starts with, and understandable, their schedules are ridiculous growing up. They're moving from one thing to the other. But hey, mom scheduled a lesson for me on Wednesday, and then mom scheduled my PT on Thursday, and I go see my strength coach on Friday, and they just get in the car and go to the next thing, and get in the car and go to the next thing, and they do what they're told when they get there, which that sounds like a dream, but it's one of those, that freshman who they're standing on first base and the ball gets hit in the left center field, and they come around second base looking at me to tell them what to do. Like, you're looking at the same thing I am. Like, Coach, should I have gone to third? I go, would you make it? Well, yeah. Well, then you probably should have gone to third.
It's kind of the point here.
Yeah, but I think so many athletes are coming from situations where they weren't encouraged to make those decisions on their own. And in some places they weren't encouraged, and in other places they were actually punished for making decisions on their own. Mm-hmm. And, coaching that out of a college athlete, I think it is one of the biggest things that we do here. And I think when I got to Millsaps, pulling in really good athletes and getting them all on the same page. I remember me trying to just get them all. Hey, we're all going to dress like this at practice. This is back before we had you have to wear this color shirt for practice, period. And that we were didn't have the budget for team practice gear, so it was just trying to get them all on the same page. And I remember one time we were on a road. We were heading to San Antonio, Texas to play 12-hour bus ride. We stopped halfway to practice. One of our players at her high school, I said, hey, go get changed. Practice gets done. I said, go get changed in the locker room. We're in a different town on a high school campus. There's other teams around. I said, go in the locker room, get changed, but I want you to all come out together to get on the bus. I don't want people wandering around. Just everybody stay in there until everybody's ready to come out and then come out. So I come out and half the team's on the bus. And so I said, I told all of you to stay in there together and come out together. And I send that group back in and they're frustrated because it's a little thing, but I said, no, we're doing things as a team. So I send them back into the school and they come out in single file, left hand above their head, right, their index finger on their nose and their right hand, and single file walking to the bus. And they were kind of sticking it to me a little bit. But the reality is everything changed after that. And then, is a little bit of, we're gonna make fun of you, coach, a little bit and tell you we think this is a little bit stupid, but we're on board now.
Right.
And I think that, I think once you get that, then you can loosen things up a little bit, but I think you have to get a team there. And I think that was the biggest thing I wanted when I got to Millsaps. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but no,
it's great. I mean, I want to know the background, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, and it's funny how, here they think they're sticking it to you, and yet they did exactly what you wanted them to do, which was to all act as a team.
Yeah.
And if that's the price that, comes along, who cares, right? As long as you get them all rowing in the same direction, you guys are going to move a lot faster.
No doubt.
You mentioned this just before about how you pretty much jumped into the head coaching role. That's a pretty big leap of faith, especially at the college level. What gave you the, what's the word I'm looking for? I know the word I'm going to say, but I don't want to say that one. But what gave you the nerve or the confidence to just jump right in? Was it being young and foolish, or did you have more to it than that?
I think young and foolish is certainly part of it. But I do, and I laugh sometimes, because Lake Forest College is a great small liberal arts college. And, at the end of the day, we all want them to have careers. But, one of the pitches of the liberal arts college is that, hey, we're going to train you to communicate well, and we're going to train you to work with other people well, and leaderships, and just, we're not going to give you a career. We're going to give you the skills to go do whatever you want to do. So I laugh a little bit sometimes. I have a great liberal arts degree. They said I could do whatever I want with that. And so softball looks fun. And and at some level, not having any significant context in the industry and not really having a grasp of how to go about becoming a college coach. I was at Resurrection High School, and I've been there 3 years. Middle of my third year, I have a class full of high school girls. It was like, Mr. Kinsella, are you gonna teach here for the rest of your life? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, everything's going fine now, but I have no idea. And she asked, what would you do if you weren't doing this? And I said, I really love teaching and I really love coaching. But if anything, I don't feel like I'm doing either as well as I could if I was just doing one. So if I wasn't doing this, I think I would see if I could coach full time. That would be really something special. And I had a player in my class come up afterwards, and after class, she's like, Mr. Kinsella, my sister is a graduate assistant softball coach at DePaul. And she gets the NCAA newspaper back when it was an actual newspaper.
Right.
And I know the back page is all want ads for classified ads for jobs. Like, she's not planning to stay in coaching. Would you want me to bring that in for you every time she gets it? And sure, that would be great. And so this sophomore in high school starts bringing me the NCAA newspaper, and you read the ads in the back, and it's, how do you get a full-time coaching job? You need 2 years of you need 2 years of full-time coaching experience to get a full-time coaching job.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of fell into it was really organic like that. And I went from there to St. Patrick High School, where I coached football for a year. The whole time kind of kept, stayed interested in softball, and I'd already started coaching, some of those girls from Resurrection High School. They had a little travel ball team that it was, just, most of the girls at Resurrection at the time had played some pickup 16-inch softball, was their experience with softball before starting. And I think a good coach can coach anything, but it's VHS tapes on how to teach pitching, and VHS tapes on, and the clinics, and the Chicago clinic up in Rosemont, and Mike Andrea speak, and all of that was, that's how I learned to coach hurdles when as a 21-year-old, that had zero experience in track. I think you go out and you ask people who know more than you do, and you beg, borrow, and steal as much as you can. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, Joe, you've been at Lake Forest for almost 20 years, and in a profession where coaches, you see it all the time. Like, there's so much movement nowadays with coaches either moving up the ladder or getting different jobs. Like, so what's been your secret there for having such longevity at Lake Forest? Like, what's the story for you there?
I think the Lake Forest is a great place, and obviously we've had a lot of softball success here, but you have good softball
Thanks
success.
For the plug.
Well, yeah, but
that's my business. Softball success.
Softball success. There you go. But it's really a special place, and there's a real family atmosphere, and as everyone does, we have things in life that are up and down, and coaching is something that my children are in the dugout every once in a while. Now, they aren't in there every day, but it's one of those things where my team knows my kids, and my kids know my team, and my coworkers know my children. My children wander into the office, and the support that I've gotten from the institution and my coworkers is really on par with what you would like to get from family. And so I think that's something that's real. I think everyone says, hey, we're a family here. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of that, I've got hard evidence of this type of support that you can get from an institution and from great coworkers. So Lake Forest has been that for me, for sure. It's afforded me lots of opportunities to be with my kids and, be around. Plus the fact that this was my move home. I was out of state for almost 8 years, and my family's still down in Bolingbrook. I've got a brother up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Got a brother down in New Lenox. My parents are still in the house I grew up in. So this was kind of the move home. So that's another family thing. And, you talk about moving around and moving up, and, the reality is, I'm moving your situation where I'm moving my kids from school to school, pulling them up and putting them in a different environment. And I'm not sure that the payoff is there. Of course, now the way salaries are going, I think there's a little bit more incentive to move around as a coach, but at the same time, I don't know that until you get to the Power 4 type levels, I don't know that the paychecks are a whole lot different at different levels of softball. So, professionally, it's not, I've got a great gig here. We can compete with anybody, and, I'm proud of the product we put on the field. I think our athletes are getting a great experience, and, but as much as anything, I think just from a personal standpoint, you stay because it's what's best for you and your family.
That's great. And you obviously enjoy coaching at the Division III level.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to be. I like the fact that our athletes certainly, I think it's a misnomer to think that athletes come here just for the education and then choose to walk on the softball field. The athletes on the softball team are here to play softball and go to med school, but but there are a lot of great schools out there, and there are a lot of great softball programs out there. But the athletes who choose, certainly at the college level, and certainly for stronger athletic programs in general, they're there because they want to be a part of that softball program, and we have no doubt amazing academic situation, but there are other schools with great academic situations too.
Yeah. And also too, Joe, I mean, you guys have a great softball team there. Like, you guys are tough. Like, I see every fall, you guys, I think this fall you played Northwestern and Loyola. So you're not like, hey, we're D3, let's not go compete against these other teams. Right. Like, and I think that's the stigma that sometimes people get with junior college and Division III or non-Division I kids. Like, oh, well, it's not D1. It's like, doesn't matter, man. Like, the softball's good at every level, and you guys compete and hang with Northwestern and Loyola, and I think and other Division I teams. So I think that's a stigma that I think that's part of what Ken and I are doing this too. Is like, hey, softball's good at every level, man.
Yeah,
it's the same. The ball's still yellow, the bases are still 60 feet, and the pitchers are all good, and the hitters can all rake. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. It's got to be a good program, and I think at Lake Forest, you guys have always had a good program.
Yeah, one of my players at the end of practice, right before we played Northwestern, Loyola, and Roosevelt, Division III, we get one playing date, and so we stack those three, and it's our only opportunity to play. So we're going to get everybody out on the field at some point. And Northwestern, regularly a top 25 Power 4 softball program, and one of my players, we were talking about, hey, we're going out there to compete to win. And it's not about whether we can or can't. We're athletes, and we're going to go out and compete to win. And one of my players threw her 2 cents in. She said, we played against all of those players. They were everyone at Northwestern and Loyola and all these programs. Those players were on our travel teams, and those players were on the teams we played against, and they were on our high school teams. And we've played with them before, and it's not different. And softball is a sport, it's not football where there's a 350-pound lineman leaning on you.
Right.
They put the ball in play. And the reality is it's you and the ball and your glove, and and the pitcher throws a pitch. The ball's in the air. You hit it or you don't hit it. And there's not, hey, when my bat hits the ball, there's some monster on the other, like, keeping me from hitting it. No, the ball's flying past me. So I think it's a really great sport from that standpoint. Really, it's an all shapes and sizes sport. Certainly being explosive, and being explosive looks different for different people. And there's the little fast kids and the big powerful kids, but either way, they're super explosive. And I think sometimes think that idea that the athletes are notably different. Certainly sometimes they are. I'm not going to take away from that, but I told my team a lot of you are, all the people playing in Power 4 schools were Division I athletes when they were freshmen in high school. It took you it took you 3 or 4 years to get there, but you developed later. You came into the sport later. But the reality is the weight room's an amazing thing. Good coaching's an amazing thing, and the intent to be a great player is probably the biggest thing.
I know one of your players, Kaya Mismash, and she came in as a freshman and made a big impact and has continued to play well. And I know she just loves it there. She loves the school. She loves playing for you. She loves the girls on the team and is having a great experience with it. And I think that's probably true for a lot of the kids that are playing there.
I think that's the goal. I don't see any reason that we need to make softball hard.
Yeah.
Softball is hard. We don't need to make it hard. Being good is hard. I always laugh, and Kai's a neuroscience major. Here's this all-American caliber athlete comes in and breaks records, 10 games into her freshman year. And, but she's a neuroscience major. She was on campus studying brain science and Parkinson's disease this summer following her sophomore year. Crazy smart kid. That kid plays with a smile on her face. She gets after it in the weight room. Like she is an all-in kid, but she, the number of recruits and their parents, they ask, is it hard to be pre-med and play college softball? Like it's hard to be pre-med. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yes.
What are we talking about right now? And yes, it's hard to play college softball if you weren't doing anything else, but the really good ones choose hard.
Yep.
And if they don't choose hard, then this isn't where you should be. And I think that's part of the reason we have happy athletes is because we're real upfront about that on the front end. But I don't need to be mean to you to be hard, for it to be hard. I don't need to yell at you for it to be hard. We just need to know, everyone understands that, hey, we all came here agreeing that we're going to chase trophies. I tell pretty much everybody who recruit, hey, you could start I could probably give you a list of schools you could start at for 4 years. And I can't tell you will start here. I'm recruiting you because you're good enough to start here. Like everybody else I'm recruiting.
Yeah.
And so at some level, my goal isn't for you to I'm going to recruit so that I don't have to put you on the field. No, that's not. No, I'm just recruiting the best softball players I can. And I'm going to try and have 20 to 25 athletes who any one of them can go out and contribute for us. And we don't compete against each other. We compete with each other. We compete side by side. And back to your job is to find a way to help us win. And if you're our All-American pitcher in the circle, it's probably how you help us win today. And you roll your ankle tomorrow, your job is still to find a way to help us win. And maybe you're the biggest cheerleader for the person that's replacing you, or you're helping with charts, or you're reading hitters for us, or there's a lot of ways you can do it, but your job is to find a way to help us. And it changes day by day.
So speaking of recruiting, are there certain things that you're looking for when you're out on the recruiting trail? Are there metrics that you're trying to find, or is it a character thing, or how do you look at it and say, that's a kid I'd really like to have on my team?
Obviously there's a talent level. I think sometimes we as coaches, Jay, we're always at the camp and like, hey, what are you looking for? And great character is always the thing people say. And it's 100% true, but they have to be good at softball too. And, and I think that's you have to have ways of, if you're a pitcher, you have to have a way to get people out. And that looks very, very different, and we had a pitcher, our pitcher that threw against Northwestern. She's throwing low 60s. She's got good movement. She's tough. Pitcher we threw against Loyola had shoulder surgery, like major shoulder surgery, a year and a half ago. She was a woman out of Alaska. She was a state champion CrossFit athlete coming out of high school. I think she finished second in women's Olympic lifting in Alaska. Crazy strong kid. Shoulder surgery sophomore year. She's a senior now. She spins the ball really, really well, has a nasty changeup, but she throws 48 miles an hour. Really?
That's her top speed?
Yep. And
wow.
She's throwing 48 with a 37 mile an hour changeup. And I'm telling you, she started against Loyola, and that was and we lost 7-6.
Wow.
And you can't get too wrapped up in the score and who went, because we're all it's a scrimmage. We're all rolling people on and off the field and that sort of thing. So the wins and losses aren't that important. But she, and we graduated a senior last year, and she on a good day, she threw 51, but she threw wiffle balls, and it's one of those, hey, this kid's out there. That kid weighed 95 pounds and's out there throwing wiffle balls with a 2.5 foot stride. And people are like, oh, you can throw her against a bad team, right? I'm like, no, you can't throw her against a bad team. You throw her against a monster bat team. Her first start as a freshman was against the number 15 team in the country. And, bats are being thrown and helmets are being thrown. She gives up one run in 5 innings and 13 pop-ups. It's so I think finding a way to get things done. Now, don't get me wrong. If I'm walking across the field, I'm probably more likely kid throwing 63 is going to catch my eye before the kid throwing 49. But I think if you can help athletes work with the thing that they have to be successful, rather than saying, "Hey, you throw 49 right now. We need to spend a bunch of time getting you to 63." I think sometimes you pick and choose your battles.
Yeah.
But I do think explosive athletes. I had an assistant join us. Coach Liz Young joined me last fall, and it's like, "Hey, when we're out recruiting, what's the thing? Like, what do you? It's like you always hit well. What do you look for in hitters?" I'm like, they have to move fast. They have to move fast, and there's, I think that there are some things that are mechanically advantageous and all of that, but you can have the prettiest swing in the world. If you aren't moving very fast, you're going to struggle to be successful. So I think I think we were top 10 in the country for home runs last year, and I think number 2 for stolen bases. So I think it's, whether it's, hey, you can stand in the box and smash it, or you run fast or whatever. But, the reality is, I don't care who you are, I'm sending you. You get on base, I don't care who you are, where you're hitting the lineup, you're running. But I think that's a thing that if you feel confident in your ability to teach the game, explosive athletes go a long way.
Yeah. And I think it's great. And, Jay and I have talked about this before too. There's this myth out there for college softball that if you're not throwing 65 to 70 miles an hour, forget about playing, pitching in college. And, you've just shown that that's obviously not true. You're, a top level college program, and you got a girl throwing 51 or 49 or, just kind of down in that area, but she knows how to compete and she knows how to get people out, and you guys know how to work with her. So for all of those out there who are concerned about their daughter who's maybe throwing 57 right now, oh gosh, she's not throwing 70 miles an hour. Don't worry about it. There's a spot for her if she wants it.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to get it done, and there are easier ways than others to get it done. Certainly.
Not that you would turn down a 70 mile an hour kid.
I would not turn that down. And honestly, it's one of those. I don't know that you're going to go win a World Series with 5 49 mile an hour throwers. I don't want to pretend that that's true, but it's nice to have one in your bullpen.
Yeah.
And and the reality is, it's nice to have one in your bullpen. And it's nice to have one throwing to your hitters sometimes, because you're going to run into that kid. And, we carry a nice pitching staff and different looks, different speeds, different styles, and enough of them that we don't wear them out throwing batting practice, but enough that our hitters can see live pitching through the winter, going into season and really, and it gives us a feel, hey, so-and-so hits Susie and Jenny really well, but can't hit Samantha. And the reality is, like, hey, who are we facing today? Hey, the other team's got Samantha out there today. Well, we might throw somebody else out in that, out in left field today.
Yeah.
So you talked about, for you, the recruiting part, what you're looking for, explosive players, very solid character of, individual, and I'm sure family as well too. I don't think people really realize, like, you're also kind of keeping an eye on their family a little bit, because they've got to be of character as well too. Regardless of how talented or explosive that kid is, you don't want any crazies coming. But I'm sure you've had players who've played, or that you've wanted to recruit, is what I wanted to say. I'm sure you've had players that you've wanted to recruit, you were invested in, and then they maybe are looking at other programs. How do you convince them to come to Lake Forest, and that Lake Forest is the right fit for them? Walk us through that a little bit, if you don't mind.
I think the biggest thing is trying to make sure that, I'm going to go all in on selling Lake Forest College and what we have to offer. I think I've got a daughter that's older daughter's working in sales a little bit now, and we talked the other day about just the idea that your job is not to con someone into buying your product. Your job is to figure out what that customer needs and what fits their needs really, really well, and find how and try to connect what your product has to offer with that person or that company. And really good salespeople do a really good job of asking questions and figuring out who somebody is, what they're about, and then trying to make a genuine connection to how you can serve their needs. I think of course we you lose recruiting battles, but I think the biggest thing that I find when I'm trying to make that connection is, are we the right school for you? There's a reason that I have amazing softball players that I'm not saying they could go start at Alabama, but I think a lot of them really would serve a lot of mid-major Division I programs well. And I think a lot of them got attention at that level. But just the idea, but I also have a lot of pre-med or high-level finance majors on my team. And, Lake Forest access to the city and, the internships and career path.
And that campus of yours is a beautiful campus. I'm sure that doesn't hurt any.
Not at all. Not at all. And, it's for being north of Chicago and it being 70 and sunny every day here. It's special. But really, it's a gorgeous campus. I think we really sell the academic fit. I think I have 4 neuroscience majors on my team. Wow. We've got 4. I think we have 4 kids in law school right now. I think we had 7 kids get their doctorate in various medical fields in the last 4 years, and another 5 or 6 that are in doctoral programs right now. So when you can show proof of concept that, hey, you can come here, compete for championships, compete for trophies, wear the ring, and get that white coat at the end. And I think we have something to offer. And I think every school does. I can brag about what we have at Lake Forest, but the reality is I think sometimes coaches get caught up in trying to sell their program. And I also think we have a great thing going softball wise, and, you guys have talked about the numbers we've put up and we've won some games and all that, which at some point, college softball is an avenue. It is an experience. And I don't think it's just for a degree. If you just want a degree, you can do that online. And it's really, but going to college, going away to college, those are experiences that it's networking. It's the stories you tell for the rest of your life. I'm not trying to recruit somebody to be a forester for 4 years. I want somebody to be a forester for 40 years, and their families are here. We homecoming football game that homecoming weekend's huge here. There's a couple thousand people up on campus. We'll have 100-some softball people here. But it's, Susie graduated 3 years ago and she's got a great job out in Arizona. But Susie's parents come to homecoming because they want to catch, she graduated 3-4 years ago. But her parents come back because they want to catch up with their friends. And, and they come to the softball tailgate. So I think those are the things, when I'm recruiting, I want them to see what we have academically. I want them to get around our team. Our team is weird and goofy and fun. And Ken, Kaya never doesn't have a smile on her face.
Right.
And they enjoy each other's company, but I think a lot of that comes down to people who they opted into Lake Forest College. They didn't get conned into coming to Lake Forest College. They didn't come here because it's the only scholarship they got. They came here because they're like, this is the family I want to be a part of. And so they opted in. And the nice thing at Division III is they can opt out anytime they want. And fortunately, we've almost never had, people step down, but they stay at Lake Forest. Mm-hmm. I think in 20 years, I've had 6 or 7 people transfer somewhere else. 1 transferred somewhere else and played. A couple transferred and hung it up. But in general, they stick around. And college softball isn't for everybody. And sometimes it's not all they hoped it would be. But as often as not, I would say most of the people that step down are, hey, I'm a junior, and I know that those two freshmen are both better than me. And the number of hours I have to put in, I've got some internship opportunities. They retire from softball sometimes before they finish 4 years. But there's a lot of things that I love to do that I no longer do, because there's only so many hours in the day. And like as an adult, you have to choose things. And at some point, you're going to take the cleats off. And it doesn't have to be at the end of senior year. It should be when you have other things that you're more passionate about or mean more to you than softball. That's when you should retire. Not because for any other reason, or you ran out, or senior year ends and you have that. But it's but yeah, I think that's what we sell. Is we sell an experience. I joke sometimes. This is the Disney cruise, and I'm the cruise director, and we're trying to create an experience, and there are lessons to be learned. It's an educational opportunity. We're in a school for a reason. That's why I think athletics belongs in so many ways. I like that in America, it's tied to the educational system. There's goods and bads to that, but I do think it keeps some premise on the idea that there are lessons to be learned, whether it's leadership, being a part of something, what it takes, how hard things are if you want to be good at them. I think you learn those things in athletics. I think you can also learn them in band. I don't think that athletics has a monopoly on those lessons, but I do think it's a great venue for it. But at the end of the day, nobody comes back 20 years after they graduate and tell me, boy, coach, you taught me how to hit that low and out pitch, and that's changed my life.
Yeah.
But they do talk about, like, it's the things they had to wrestle with, the hard things. And sometimes it's fundamentals and sometimes it's team dynamics or whatever. Those things that they learned how to wrestle with hard and how to do hard. Those are the things that they come back and thank you for.
I did want to ask you about changing gears just a little bit about, you're a pretty well-known hitting coach. How did you get involved in that? And are you still doing that? Are you still giving lessons? And feel free to plug that if you'd like.
I do still do lessons. I enjoy it. I think it's a combination of it's a way to stay out in the community. It's certainly, it's a small side hustle that it helps pay the bills. And there's no doubt about that. I really do enjoy working with kids and their families as they try to grow as softball players. And I know I struggled a little bit with lessons early on because I grew up, like I told you, I was a rec ball kid. My dad never played organized sports ever. And I don't know that he played I know he was the guy who grew up, trying to help support his family when he was 10 years old, and so didn't have the opportunity to play sports. But I think when I started playing t-ball and little league and rec basketball, he was the guy who went over to the library and checked out a book on how to teach baseball because he wanted to be a great dad. And so I grew up playing for volunteer coaches. And so I think that charging someone to teach them how to hit was a little bit tough for me. At some point it was, hey, this is an hour I'm spending with someone else's kid and instead of my kid was probably the biggest, the biggest change of that. Because you are, right. And that's there's a value to that time. So I've gotten to the other side of that, but I still think that sports is something that I try to think should be accessible. But I do enjoy hitting lessons. I do some individual stuff and some small group stuff. I work with teams sometimes, and I think it's a combination of I hopefully make people better, and I think some in lots of ways. It also serves as a little bit gives me extra reps, as you're trying to wrestle with some new concepts. And I think I do a pretty good job with hitters. And, I don't know that my team's offensive numbers have changed a ton in the last 20 years, but I think how I teach hitting's changed quite a bit. But I think our approach to hitting hasn't changed a whole lot. And so as much as the fundamentals matter, I think the approach it still trumps the mechanics every day of the week.
Absolutely.
So, but I think I'd be bored if I was still teaching hitting the same way, doing the same drills I did 20 years ago. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think keeping that stuff fresh helps you avoid just being burned out. If it's the same thing over and over and over. And again, we know the game is evolving. So are there any other ways that you keep yourself, keep your coaching fresh that you avoid that burnout? I know we've talked a lot. You and I have been messaging back and forth, and I'm sure probably with Ken too, a little bit about the motor preferences. Just some new things to look at and do that. Are there any other things you're kind of digging into that kind of keeps you, motivated?
I think I try to stay on top of. I'll listen to anybody talk about softball, as far as like hitting, that sort of thing. Motor preferences isn't softball specific. It's how people move and how people work. I think just in general, I try to read. I'm not somebody who's I like the technical piece of it, but just from hours in the day, I usually get the person who really, really knows what they're talking about. And I think really good teachers and coaches make information accessible. So I try to find those people that do make the science accessible. I don't have the time or the bandwidth to be an expert in kinesiology, but there are people
get one of those neuroscience kids to help you out with that.
Yeah, you got those neuroscience kids.
The neuroscience kids, but there are people who are, hey, this is all I do. Okay, now like dumb it down for me. And the ones who are really good don't dumb it down. They just make really, really complicated things accessible and understandable for, which I think I learned from them how to be a better teacher as much as I learned the information that they're giving. But I think there's so much information out there now. The reality is that, hey, you want great hitting drills? You don't need a great hitting coach. Like YouTube will give you great hitting drills. But you need the person that can translate and know that, hey, this is a great drill, but not for you.
Yes, yes.
And because there's so much, and there's nothing wrong with the drill, and there's nothing wrong with you, but that's not a match for you. And the number of times I'm in the cage and I've got two athletes in the cage, and I tell the kids, I'm like, hey, you close your ears because I need you not to hear what I'm telling Jenny over here, because that would destroy your swing. But that's stuff that I've learned from, just reading. And I think it's understanding how people learn and and I think I've heard you guys talk about on your podcast before, just try to meet people where they are and say, hey, this person works best in this way. And there's going to be some things that are 99% universal, except when it's not.
Right.
And, and some things that are just really, really pretty hard. This works for you and definitely doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And the other thing too, sometimes when you're looking at drills and trying to decide what to do, I'll see, kid will show me, oh, my coach had me, my team coach had me doing this drill. And I'll say, it's a good drill, but it's nothing you need. You already know how to do that. You would benefit from doing something else. That time, you've got limited time to spend on this. You would be much better off working on this instead, because you already do this well.
Yeah, I think that's where the conversation with an athlete and getting them to engage in the conversation. Some of them do a great job of it. Some of them struggle with that a little bit. Jay, you were talking on a podcast, one of your recent podcasts, about asking questions at camps, and a little bit of, it almost doesn't matter what question you ask. It's to some extent, like, they're kids. Some of them are great at asking, and some of them just struggle to open their mouths.
Yep.
And so to some extent, if they struggle, then just start there. It's like, get them to start opening their mouth. And that's super valuable. And then once you get that, you can go with a little deeper and actually make it more and more functional for the task at hand. But
yeah, I think my point is that, like, just ask me how I like my coffee. What's my Starbucks order? Right? Like, it can be completely low risk. It doesn't have to be, hey, what are you looking for in a recruit? Right? It doesn't have to be that. I'm not asking you for that. Right? Like, Connect. Exactly. Like
Yeah.
I'm looking for that connection there. So,
I like to tell recruits, I'm like, hey, we can talk. I don't want to, we had a 5-hour bus ride to Iowa. I don't want to talk about first and third place the whole time. You know, you're allowed to be interesting. You are more than a softball player. But yeah, I think that connection piece, and of course there are some kids that are quieter than others, and there's zero problem with that. But if you're really going to coach someone, coaching is always going to be a conversation. If a really good coaching is going to be a conversation. I had a kid, and I forget the skill. Like there was something she was trying to get covered, and I said, hey, let's just focus on trying to get your front elbow here. And she'd been wrestling with something, and she takes the next. I'd be like, hey, just try and get your elbow here. And the next ball, she smokes it. And I've gotten pretty good at saying, okay, so what was your focus right there? Because I'm like, hey, I just gave her a cue and it worked and she smashed that ball. And so now I'm just going to focus on that front elbow. I'm going to remind her about that front elbow. And I didn't assume that time, although in the past I probably would have, because it's a nice ego boost. I said, like, what were you thinking on that swing? Before that swing, I just thought my mom always told me to relax and just let the game come to me. And so I just did that. I'm like, and so a little bit of like, it doesn't, I want to figure out what works for them. I don't need to be the person that gave that wisdom to them. The goal is for them to be good. The goal isn't for me to be a guru, you know? And so if you don't ask the question, I think a lot of times you assume it was this thing, or you told them this, and then 5 pitches later, you told them something different. And that's when their swing took off. And the reality was the same. It was the thing you told them 5 minutes ago just clicked. And so just kind of really, hey, where are you at? What's going on? Like, how does that, like, what's the feel for you on that? And it's like, well, I really feel that here. Okay. And then to some extent, like letting them give you the words they need. And, you know, and just because I think a lot of times our ego gets in the way. You want to be helpful. And when you think you were, boy, like, hey, let's look what I did. And, you know, I like to tell my team, like, if you hold the bat by the barrel and hit with the knob and you hit 400, I'm going to get credit for it. And I'm like, boy, you did great things with that kid. I'm like, I think that's the dumbest thing I ever saw in my life. But she's hitting for it. I'm like, if you're good, I get credit for it. Whether it's because of me or not. So I just want you to be good. I don't care why you're good. I get credit one way or the other. So, but yeah, I think that conversation's everything.
Yes, for sure. So Joe, I know we told you to be about an hour. We're a little bit longer than that right now, but
I talk a lot.
We have a couple more questions for you. One, this is, you know, so speaking of getting to know people, do you have any hidden talents or special hobbies or anything that kind of people would be surprised about?
Well, I like to read a lot, you know, and whether like just stuff that helps me as a coach or grow as a person. You know, I think the stronger I am, the better I'm going to be able to serve everybody else. I like to read just for fun too. And if I turn up the radio loud enough in the car, I'm a really good singer.
So you have a fairly extensive coaching tree, right? We know one of those branches is your daughter Zoe, right? So how does the rest of it look? Who else is under your tree that's out there? Give us a little.
Oh gosh, I've got quite a few that just assistant coaches and former players. Kaylee Purgatorio just graduated. She's out at Benedictine University in Arizona. She's coaching out there. My older daughter Kaylee's been coaching travel ball since she played for me, and she's doing some lessons as well, some hitting and defensive focused lessons. Probably the most notable, biggest success story, like Laura Matthews down at Belmont, coached with me for 4 years. She was catcher at Dayton, and she's from Nashville originally, and came here to just had a regular job, and just thought she'd try kind of like, hey, I'll keep my hands in the game a little bit. She was going to coach on the side and a little stipend to come be my assistant coach. And was with me 2 years in. She's like, I think I want to do this for a living. And spent 2 more years with me, and it was nice. It was when she decided she wanted to be a head coach. I'm like, well, then I want you to switch over and be a pitching coach. And she had been a catcher, but I'm like, if you want to be a head coach, it'll challenge you and force you to kind of like really like be ready for all of it. And so she was with me for 4 years right out of college, and then went to Wittenberg and then Wright State. And Wright State cut their program. She's the head coach at Wright State, cut their program during COVID. And then she got to go back to her hometown, Nashville at Belmont. And she's got one of the best pitchers in the country. That kid's ridiculous. But Laura's a really, really, I think, great softball mind who does things the right way. I've been really, really happy to have been a stopping point in her journey. But boy, what a coach she is. The head coach down at Southeast Louisiana is one of my former assistants. But yeah, I've got Hannah Kelnicki's the assistant coach out at Cornell, and she's a local Bolingbrook Plainfield kid. Got a handful coaching high school games. But yeah, it's been fun to see them go on and have success. And, you get out to the NFCA coaches convention and get to catch up with them. And, I always tell my kids, I'm like, I wish you could go recruiting with me every time I go so you can actually see all my friends. So.
Well, and it's funny too, because it's going to be a little different, I think, in your situation, because you've got, instead of your kids becoming coaches, a lot of times they're becoming doctors and lawyers and, brain surgeons and researchers and all of these other very high level, very important jobs. So a bigger impact you're making in the world than strictly the softball world.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to serve the world. Coaching's one of them, but there's a lot of good ones.
So is there anything in your coaching career, the one thing that stands out that you really take pride in?
Gosh, I think the biggest thing is just when I see my former players, I think a lot as a coach, it's a nice ego boost when your former players come back and see you, but with social media, it's so easy to see how connected they stay, that this is really a permanent part of who they are. This is, and not just here, it happened at Millsaps, and even go back to Resurrection High School, that bond that those teams have had. And I think it comes from getting them all to share the experience, and and to see people who weren't real, they were great teammates in college, but they didn't hang out together. They weren't best friends in college. But if anything, some of them are better friends now because they have that shared experience. And I think it's something that is so valuable. And just to see it, I feel like it validates what I want athletics to be. None of my players are going to go be professional athletes. And, at some point, I just think that the value in it is the experience. And that doesn't mean that we're not chasing trophies. But the reality is chasing trophies is what makes it hard. Chasing trophies is the shared direction. It's that. And I think if I'm playing on a men's slow pitch team on Wednesday nights, hey, we're just there to play the game and then go drink some beers and eat some pizza, that's a ton of fun. If we're all getting together on Wednesday night and we're like, hey, let's get into a couple tournaments this weekend, let's see if we can be the best slow pitch team in the country, that's a ton of fun. But being on a team where half the guys just want to drink beer and eat pizza and half the team wants to go win a national championship, that's not fun.
Right.
I think I'd enjoy being on either of those teams, but not the combined team.
Yeah.
And so I think trying to get that shared direction, and it's starting that in the recruiting process. Like, this is who we are. This is what we're trying to do. If you want to be a part of it, that seems to have panned out pretty well as I see our the 15, 20 years out where our athletes stay connected. So I'm really proud of that.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it and appreciate all the time you gave us.
I appreciate you having me. I hope that was helpful. I hope that serves your podcast well. And
definitely.
We appreciate you, buddy.
No problem. This is great. I'm looking forward to getting the motor preferences stuff. You guys are in deep on that, and I was supposed to go down to Chattanooga 2 weeks ago and had a family thing come up and wasn't able to go, but I want to chase that tail a little bit and see what I can wrestle out of that to help my athletes.
Yeah, anytime you want to talk about that, just let us know. We're both really happy to do that, and we're on the discovery path as well. So
yeah,
yes, yep.
That keeps it fun. And I know, Ken, you and I haven't had a ton of conversations. Jay and I always, when we're out recruiting, I feel like we're always, kind of, hey, what do you think about this? What have you seen this? Like, and it's, almost, it's every time I see Jay, we're really, really close to breaking into a coaching clinic. So.
I know, it's awesome. Yeah. I love it, man. I'm like, I always look, is Joe going to be there? Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think those are the people I love being around. People who like to, I'm not too into the gossip and the, who's who and who's going where. It's like the people who really love the sport and love coaching and want to be good at it and want to serve their athletes and
want to keep learning.
Yeah. There's so much that I think we can still squeeze a little more juice out of the lemon.
Absolutely.
For sure.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, that's it for us this week. Thanks to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. If you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. On behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.